well, it's over 12 months actually since we made the last video about the pillars of acting freedom. And in the meantime, which is, yes, over a year, it's almost 14 months, I've taken time to rest and think about things. I had some time back home in Australia, which was really nice to connect to family again and the land that I was born in. That was most interesting. But now I'm back in London and commencing the work again. But the work will commence in a different way. It was very interesting that while I was resting, I was, when I was in Australia as well, I was Skyping with one of the actors that had been working with me for the last 5 years with workshops, and then he went and did acting and had his own company, and we were Skyping about something very interesting that I began to notice at the end of the workshops that I was doing. Well, the last workshop I did was the end of March 2018, and I noticed the exercises that we were doing, the basic Chekhov exercises, but mostly those exercises that I've developed about how we come into the outside world, how we come into number 3. And I noticed those exercises, like the exercises about atmospheres, creating an atmosphere in the world, not the feeling within yourself, the inner feelings, but the atmosphere in the outer world. Also the exercise that we did, the famous classic exercise, which is crossing the threshold, and all those that have done Chekhov workshops wherever they may be in the world, I'm sure have done that. Basically, exercise is to distinguish between the everyday ordinary world and the extraordinary, the artistic world, you could say, or the difference between the poetic and the prose, the ordinary and the extraordinary, where things are heightened a little bit from the ordinary into another realm. And we noticed that the exercise of crossing the threshold would begin by standing against the wall of the space, the workshop space we were in, and then consciously doing a big step, and then coming into that extraordinary space. And then the whole space would change, and I began to get very fascinated in that. Everything we did, or the exercise of the optimum position, or we've called it neutral gear as well, something also happened there. But the crossing of the threshold exercise, I was always fascinated. Something really tangible happened in the space. And then I began to sense, or think really, how we can actually create, besides just doing the crossing of the threshold, the space that we work in as actors, the space where the audience lives as well. And we share that space, and we could say that space between actor and audience is what theatre's about. How do we create qualities, atmospheres that are objective, that we're not forced back to our own inner life, our own inner experiences from our past to create those qualities? And I began to sense that the space itself, we cannot see the qualities within it. We only sense them. We call them atmospheres, or something really happened in this space. And those qualities cannot be seen, only sensed in a way. Then I began to think, well, what is in this space, in this air? And then I began to realize it's full of all sorts of frequencies on the electromagnetic field. And that electromagnetic field is the medium for carrying all your telephone conversations through Wi-Fi on your smartphone, all the television stations, all the radio stations of police, of ambulance. We could say the actual space is polluted by all these frequencies on that lower electromagnetic field. We could say it's sort of like sub-nature. Then I thought, what about those qualities that are not transmitted through the electromagnetic field? In live theatre, in live performance. And how do we create those qualities? How do we actually create those principles? Because that's what we're dealing with here. And I began to sense that when I hear music, I sense something, but it comes to me through the waves of the air. You know, you've got devices now, you record music or sound, and there's little things like this, isn't there? Or it goes like this sometimes. We can see those waves on the device that shows us how the sound waves move. But in live performance of music, not amplified, no microphones, how does one create that? So something happens objectively in that space. And I began to sense that the music, all music, no matter what instrument you're playing, or a full orchestra, music itself, the basic 7 notes and the 8th making the octave, that's all you've got. But then you've got the different keys of music, like C major, F major, and all through, there's 12 of them, and 24 if you take the major minor as well. And then I began to work with this guy that had been working with me as an actor, but he'd also learnt piano from when he was 5 and began to compose as well when he was a teenager. And so I began to ask him, could we work together? He began to get very interested in it as well, because he was noticing with the exercise, particularly the crossing of the threshold exercise, something really happened in the space. So we began to work on examining the qualities of these musical keys and how we could apply them to acting. The point being that we just wouldn't listen to the music and get a feeling and then think, oh, we're working with C major or B flat or something. And it was based on a book that Michael, the guy that I'd worked with, found, and it was written in about 1818, thereabouts, in Austria. I'm sure the guy was Austrian. His name was Schubert. Not Schubert, the composer, but Schubert. And he listed all the qualities of all the major and minor keys. And that was the beginning of our work. We've had lots of sessions on the piano, listening to examples on my iPad in the studio here behind me. And we got very, very excited. So that's what I've been doing. And hopefully in a few months' time, I'll be able to, or Michael and I will be able to condense it down to actual acting exercises that are built upon the basis, the foundation of what Chekhov has given. So that is really exciting work. And as we began to look and examine the different qualities and even the gestures of the different keys, not only the atmosphere and the quality, but the gestures as well. We went down the rabbit hole. We saw that it was connected to mathematics, to geometry, to music itself, of course, and also the whole mathematics of the cosmos in astrology. So it began to be very exciting work. The danger now is that we're going to sort of get very expansive, but we've got to bring it down and see how we apply it to acting, to take acting onto another level.